and Matchroom Boxing USA announce a new groundbreaking partnership. With this is Eddie Goldman. We just had some groundbreaking news with Matchroom Boxing USA. You want to explain to our audience exactly what this new development is?
This is a major deal that was signed between Matchroom Boxing USA, which is expanding Eddie Hearn's organization. It's known for promoting many fighters, Anthony Joshua, Dillian White, Danny Jacobs in the U.S., and many, many others. And they've signed with a company that is not as well known in the U.S. and is actually relatively new, called DAZN, D-A-Z-N. People had to learn how to pronounce it.
Where's DAZN out of?
DAZN is they're headquartered in London. They actually, as we speak, haven't opened shop to open their streaming services for U.S. customers yet, but that's coming in about a month or two. They're working on that. What they provide is what's called an over-the-top service, or OTT, which is basically video streaming, not on TV, although you could hook it up. There's ways to hook it up to these new fancy TVs. That
Smart
can
TVs, a smart TV.
That'll spy on you there. But what it is you could watch their service just like other streaming services on your computer, on your smartphone, on your tablet, on devices like
everybody's
that.
smart. Everybody's smart but me.
Okay. Well, you have one of those things. Well, here's the deal. You don't have a contract. It isn't a network. You don't have to get a cable box. You don't have to get all that in. With the devices that you already have or are going to have anyway, you could watch the service for a fee. And it's generally a flat fee. It's different in different countries. Obviously, different countries have different currencies. And it's between roughly $15 and $20 a month. Here's what they have to do to get over in the United States. In Japan, in Europe, in Canada, they could show American sports, major American sports, the NFL, NBA, big sports like that, and that otherwise are very difficult or impossible to get. In Japan, for example, there's very little cable service, and you have satellite service, but it's very small. So if you get this online, you could watch these events, you watch these other sports. In the U.S., of course, as of now, these sports are all contracted to all sorts of different networks. Most
ESPN Plus, that's $4.99 a month.
Well, we'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to that.
I'm jumping the gun.
I think the content that they can offer in terms of boxing will be better than what's called ESPN Plus, because they're talking about 16 fights a year from the UK, which are already on Sky Sports, and people in the US have found various strange ways to watch those things. 16 fights originating in the US, and it's 32 fights a year, so almost, say, 3 fights a month, the whole card, and they'll be able to show the whole card, whereas here on HBO or Showtime, they'll show 2 or 3 fights. Maybe on one of the secondary networks, they'll put some of the undercard fights, but they'll be able to put the whole thing on because you don't have the same problems that you have when you're doing a TV network. And they say they're going to develop shoulder programming, interviews, all that kind of stuff. We'll see, and we'll see the quality of the fights, because we're talking about a lot of fights, and we're talking about getting these fighters known to people. A fighter like Dillian White's a very exciting heavyweight fighter, but he's based in the UK. A lot of people may not know him. And so how do you build up interest if he's in the main event? Or you just had Tony Bellew against David Haye in the UK. Maybe people know David Haye, not as much Tony Bellew. It's an interesting fight. It was an important fight. And you have to build up interest by showing his old fights, his history, doing interviews with him, all the stuff that you'd build up. So you know, instead of, just 2 guys getting in the ring and fighting with each other, who are they, what's the significance? So they say they're going to be able to do that. The thing they're going to have to come up with to make this work in the United States is enough programming that people are going to spend. They haven't announced the price yet, but it's probably going to be in the $15, $20 a month range. What are you going to pay for to watch 3 boxing shows a month?
Will they have any problems with unions and all those type of other things that happen in the United States?
Well, in the venues, yeah. In the venues, they will. And also, they're going to need technicians in their office and all of that. But remember, they're going on the internet. So that it's not like cable technicians where the cable company has its own employees and you have the crap Spectrum, has refused to negotiate with the...
So what you'll
IBEW.
need is internet.
You'll need the internet either through a computer, a laptop, a desktop, a mobile device, a smartphone, a tablet, any of those types of things. And they're not in that business at all. They're in the content business of providing that. So are they going to be able to, what are they going to show? Some European football matches that there's already a lot of that on free TV or cable TV in the U.S. And then people even call the sport something different over here. In the U.S. we call it soccer. And you say football, you think of the NFL. You're going to load up on a lot of that kind of stuff, which maybe is obviously the most popular sport in the world and very popular in the UK and in Europe, but not as popular in the United States. So they're looking down the road to be able to get that content. Right now they can't put on a Yankees-Red Sox game, but they hope in a couple of years in a very crowded sports environment to be able to bid for those sports rights in a few years when those contracts are up. And remember, the big American sports are on more than one service and more than one network.
Well, it is progressive. I mean, look at what has happened. We've lost newspapers. Most people do see things online. I guess you could be at work and also hit on the app and watch some sports. So I guess maybe it is the new way of viewing news.
Down the road, yes.
It's sports.
Down the road, yes. And there's a lot of differences with ESPN Plus that, to me, give it an advantage, although, again, we don't know the price point, we don't know the whole programming package. First of all, for ESPN Plus, although that's just $4.99 a month, you still need to have cable subscription. You don't for DAZN. You could cut the cord or never have the cord.
For ESPN Plus,
you have to have a cable subscription, paying all that money to one of these.
So I'm paying to Spectrum or whoever, and I'm also paying the $4.99.
Yes.
A month to
For
have
DAZN,
the app.
it's up to you. You can get as much or as little as you want on that. If you want to keep cable, you can. If you want to get rid of cable, you can get rid of it. You can make that choice.
They call it the Netflix of sport.
Well, they say
Maybe.
this is a debate been going on in the techie business world that I've been following. Can there be a Netflix of sports? Because sports are divided. There are so many different sports, so many different countries, so many complicated rights fees for these things. And it's different in each country. The U.S. is very parochial with sports. If we were to talk, like, for example, I'm talking about the Yankees and the Red Sox, okay? You could
We're
go
up to. Do we have a score here?
I don't think it started yet as we're recording. The thing is, we could go down. We're in Rockefeller Center. We could go down in the street and say, what do you think of the Yankees and Red Sox? And we could find a lot of people could discuss it intelligently, too, about what's going on. If you go in the streets of London and you ask about the Yankees and Red Sox, so you go in Tokyo, which is a huge baseball country but has their own baseball league, the Yankees and Red Sox, they're not going to, very few people are going to know, very few people are going to watch. Just if I said, what's happening in the Champions League in football? We'll go down, what do you mean football? You talk about the Giants and the Jets? No, we're talking about football in the Champions League or the Premier League or whatever. I don't really know. I don't follow that sport. The point is that it's different, and the sports world in the U.S. is very parochial. In other words, outside of the U.S., very few people care about the NFL. Very few people care about Major League Baseball, because even the baseball fans, if you're in Korea, they have their own league. If you're in Japan, they have their own league, and there are many other leagues. So people do follow what's going on in Major League Baseball, but they have their own leagues, and they don't really know, they don't follow it in the same way. Boxing is different. It's an international sport, so this can be on everywhere. But even with Matchroom, they have a very good deal with Sky Sports that's showing all of their fights in the UK. It's on other networks around the world. It gets very complicated. So to say there can be one Netflix of sports, that's going to take a huge
Well, that's how they
shakeout.
marketed
It's
it.
going to be very difficult to do. And you mentioned even Netflix. What Netflix shows in the U.S. is different what it shows in other countries, because other countries, the rights will be different. For example, the Star Trek Discovery is on Netflix. I think and I'm not sure which countries, but I know outside of the U.S. it's on Netflix. In the U.S. you got to get the CBS app, the CBS All Access OTT service. It gets very complicated. So can there be one Netflix of sports? I think it's going to be very difficult. But DAZN seems to have a lot of money. They seem to have some very experienced executives. They brought in John Skipper, formerly the head recently of ESPN, to be one of their top executives. They're bringing in Eddie Hearn, arguably the most important and powerful boxing promoter in the world. Can they make it work? Will people shell out this money? Where will the money come from? What's going to happen in the economy in the next year or two when they're really rolling out DAZN in the United States? There are a lot of questions that need to be answered. So it's an interesting proposition. The jury is still out, and we're going to see, and we're going to also see what kind of fights they put on. You know, if these are low-level Joe Schmo against Joe Blow fights, people are going to say, why the hell am I paying for this? But if they're putting on top-level championship fights, and then people get on Twitter and say, wow, this is an important fight, this is a great fight, then they'll have a shot at doing it. So we'll see. It's a very interesting proposition. They claim to be heavily capitalized with $1 billion, and we'll see how they do.
Well, that's it. I'm Kristal Hart. This is the Kristal Hart Show. This is Eddie Goldman. You know, when my dad was alive, he would always say, I just love that guy because he knows about sports. So I'm trying to give you the best that there is. Eddie Goldman, no holds barred. Yes.
Thank you, darling.